El Silbón urban horror legend. This story is of a very beautiful village named Los Llanes in South America in 1980, where there is greenery and farms all around. A boy named Maso was staying at his uncle's house near one of those farms during the holidays. People used to sleep early these days, so everyone slept after having dinner in the evening. Maso lay down on the bed, but he was not able to sleep. He was just looking at the fan on the roof. Then suddenly he heard a very loud sound of animals. He got up and went outside. He saw that the sound was coming from a nearby animal shelter where there were many cows. Maso looked towards the sky, and the whole sky was covered with dark clouds. He thought that maybe all the cows were scared of the coming storm. So he went to the cows to take them to the inner stable, and with great difficulty he started taking the cows one by one to the inner stable. But Maso had never seen the cows so restless. Due to this restlessness, Maso started crying. It was becoming difficult for Maso to take them away from there. Heavy rain had also started. With great difficulty, when he sent some of the cows from the many cows inside to the inner stable, he started smelling a very foul smell of meat. As he was sending more cows inside and the number of cows was decreasing, the smell was increasing. When only 5 or 6 cows were left, he saw that the blood-soaked bones of an old cow were lying there. Seeing this, Maso froze there and started screaming loudly. But before he could run away from there or do something, he heard a voice from far away. Amidst the heavy rain, that voice coming from miles away was so terrifying that Maso's soul trembled on hearing it. On hearing it, Maso understood that he was going to die today because that voice was of El Silbón's whistle, which meant that El Silbón was coming to him. Maso had heard many stories of El Silbón. He remembered how in his childhood his relatives used to tell the story of a man who had an encounter with El Silbón. According to the story of his relatives, that man was also going to a function on his horse late at night from a similar field, when the horse's foot slipped on something in that big deer field. When the man got down and looked, there was a deer bone lying there, from which the eaten meat was still hanging. Before the horse rider could understand anything, he heard a soul-stirring whistle from a distance. He tried to lift his horse, but it was too late. He heard the sound of something big jumping on a tree a little distance away from him. That horse rider wanted to run away from there, but then a bone hit his head with force, due to which his head broke. That horse rider started screaming and asking for help. But it was of no use because a terrifying 19 feet tall man was standing in front of him like the face of death. There was a hat on his head, but the body and face were like that of a demon. That horse rider had never seen such a terrifying creature. He had a sack full of bones, and taking out the bones from that sack, he started hitting the horse rider without stopping, and the horse rider lost his life. But that man started eating the bones from his body. Next morning, while grazing the cows, some villagers found the dead body of the horse rider, which had turned into a skeleton. It is said that the 19 feet tall skeleton-like man is El Silbón, and he still roams in that area. This story was going on in Maso's mind, and before he could run away, suddenly a 19 feet long shadow appeared on the ground, and then a man taller than that shadow came out, who was wearing a straw hat, and whose flesh was hanging from his body, which was cut from all sides. This man taller than 19 feet was none other than El Silbón. That man started walking towards him. The sound of the bones clashing was getting louder, and the beating of Maso's heart was getting louder. To save him, Maso ran from there, and he felt that El Silbón was coming. Silbón was chasing him by climbing trees and jumping from one tree to another. Maso kept screaming. El Silbón stood right in front of him. He extended his terrifying long arms, on which his own chopped flesh was hanging, towards him and tried to kill him. Then a dog barked. Hearing this, Silbón came running in fear and disappeared in the air. When Maso looked, his pet dog was barking there and probably had come there after hearing Maso's screams. Maso himself believed that if his dog was not there that day, then the bag hanging on El Silbón's back would have contained Maso's bones too. After that night, Maso kept thinking about El Silbón. He asked his relatives and other people living nearby about El Silbón's story. What they told him was much more scary than what happened to him. People told him that the story of El Silbón was absolutely true, according to which a spoiled boy lived in that area with his small family in the 18th century. Since that boy was the only child of that family, his parents and grandfather used to listen to everything he said. One day that boy called his father for dinner, after which his father came with his hunting rifle and a sack. He went out to hunt, and when his father did not return home for a long time, the boy became very angry. His mother gave the boy a very sharp kitchen knife for his protection and told him to go and find his father in the forest and bring him back. When the boy returned, his father was not with him, but there were pieces of meat and some organs and bones in the sack, which he gave to his mother and asked her to cook it as deer meat. His mother was feeling strange while cooking meat inside the sack, and she started getting suspicious. So the boy's mother told her fear to the boy's grandfather. On hearing this, his grandfather took the boy out and tied him to a tree and started hitting him hard with a hunter until the boy told the truth, a truth which was very horrifying. The boy told that when he found his father in the forest, he was empty-handed because he could not hunt the deer. The boy became very angry with him, and in that anger, the boy killed him with the knife lying near him, and with the same knife, he removed his flesh from his body and cut the rest of the body into pieces and filled it in his sack and came home. Hearing this truth, the grandfather of that boy started whipping him so hard that the flesh of that boy's body started hanging from his body. After that, his grandfather poured chili and alcohol on his body and freed him from the tree and put a big bundle of his father's flesh and bones on his shoulders and left his two terrible dogs behind him and left him to wander forever. It is said that from that day till today, the soul of that boy started wandering in the name of El Silbón. Almost all the people living in that area believe that they have definitely encountered El Silbón at least once, who sits in the trees and whistles in a different way and attacks like an animal on anyone who roams in the fields late at night. It is said that he is just afraid of dogs, and that is why people in all the houses of that area have kept dogs. The boy was saved that night because of his dog, otherwise he too would have become a victim of El Silbón today. Friends, if you like this urban horror legend of El Silbón, so to see stories of such urban horror legends, subscribe to Scary Office and keep watching heart-wrenching horror stories every week.